Today's guest is the kind of woman who doesn't just wear many hats, she spins them, stacks them, and somehow makes it look like soul work. She's a soul alignment coach, intercultural consultant, and a global guide. She's the mirror, the midwife, and the mouthpiece for women who are ready to bounce back and rise, and she's just getting started. Please welcome Cha Jones.
Hello, AJ, and thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be
It's a
with you.
pleasure. It's an honest pleasure to have you here. So, I wanted to kickstart this episode today by asking you what's been your journey so far in your relationships and the different stages of your life that's led you here.
Whew, that's a lot. So I will say that on my journey, I haven't had a whole lot of relationships. However, one of the things that I would say if I'm spanning my life, um, because I love deep, um, I'm one who, when I look at a relationship and I look at how I want to be in a relationship, I give with all of myself, right? I love deep, and um, I'm not a surface level person, and I don't love uh, in a surface level way. And so my relationships have always been challenging for me because I know that if they have to come to an end, number one, I have to honor myself. And I'm okay always walking away from a relationship. And that's kind of hard, especially when we live in a society where we're taught to be in monogamous relationships for life. And I learned early on in life that if this doesn't honor me and honor who I am and where I'm going, and I don't see the connection, then I must be willing to walk away. And at first, that was very difficult for me, but I grew into that. And now I understand that more so, at 49. I understand why I have always been that way. Um, but even with that being said, I think that my intention has always to go into a relationship giving completely, because what I've also learned is that when I do, or if I have to decide whether this is a long-term relationship or it's just a relationship that has been part of my journey, that um I've given all of everything I can to this relationship, and that if I choose to walk away, that I don't have any regrets. And I'm not a circle back person. So I don't feel like I'm gonna ever come back to this relationship. We can, hopefully become cordial. Um, but I would say that my relationships have been very deep, um, transformational at best, and has taught me a whole lot about not only myself, about what love means to me, and what it is to have relationships, because I think relationships mirror you in many respects. So there are things about you that you need to learn from other people, and things that they come to teach you. So I think that has been, part of. So I would say my relationships have been very reflective.
And I think relationships in their nature should be reflective, to be very honest. I feel like relationships are one of those spaces where it really tells you where you need to grow and really tells you about the spaces you enjoy. So it's such a great area to explore more about yourself, and it gives you that pathway to grow. When you were speaking about your entire journey, I had so many questions that came up. But the first thing that I was thinking about, if someone's listening to this, you've spoken about, being able to walk away from relationships. How long does it take for you, or has it taken for you, to realize that something's not working? And what's that process like for you? What happens?
So, okay. So for me, I take people for face value. So until you show me you are not who you say you are, like, I believe your representative. And it's until like your representative shows me I'm no longer representing this person in this way. Okay. Um, but I tend to take people for face value. So, and I also feel like you can't just leave. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore just arbitrarily. I think you should do the work and realize whether or not it is something that you're willing to commit to long term, or if it's something that's like, I but trust your, we have intuition, we have good judgment if we listen, right? And so I think it just really determined, it's determined by that relationship and the things that are going on in that relationship. And so it could be years, it could be months, but I have always been very good with listening to my intuition, and if it just don't feel right, then I have to exit. And so, and that's the hard part, because you might really like this person, but it's just not a good fit for that particular type of relationship, a romantic relate. Maybe y'all just really need to be friends. And so it's hard to determine, but I go with my gut always.
Okay. So when you say you go with your gut, is there something that triggers your gut?
Often, yes. For instance, in my last relationship, there were just things I saw, I noticed, that I was like, because again, people, they start with their representative, and the representative looked amazing. But then I started to see that there were vast issues that the person had with alcohol. I didn't, for instance, the person smoked. I did not even know that the person smoked for months. So
Months.
they had never smoked in front of me, and I never smelt smoke on them. So things
All
like
right.
that showed up, that I was like, who are you? But in time, so it was, 3 4 months that had, went on before I even noticed certain. I questioned certain things, but it wasn't like huge red flags that were like waving. And so, because the person became was very comfortable with me, very early on, I didn't really notice certain things. And then by the time I did, I was like, it wasn't one of those relationships I could just walk away from immediately, because I
Yeah.
was then pregnant. So that became a lifelong relationship that I didn't I didn't necessarily see it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's always tough, right? When you have to face that really difficult decision. What are your red flags in a person?
My red flag: people who have um, like substance abuse, people who lie. I I cannot deal with a liar to save my life. Uh, just people who have addictions in any way, shape, or form. I'm not dealing with those. People who are not consistent. Um, that's a red flag for me. Like, especially early on. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Um, but the big ones are people who have like certain types of issues, that either they have parent issues, or they have like different addiction type, addictive personalities. Those are really big red flags for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, everything you were just speaking about is kind of reflective of what of the story you just mentioned a little bit before. It's when people's words don't match their actions, and they have the words they present, and then you wait for some time, and their actions are no longer matching with what they said they were, and it seems like that's the big red flag. Can people make a relationship work when there is substance issues?
I mean, I'm
And what would
sure.
that take?
I'm sure they can. I'm not willing. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so for me, because I think you also have to know yourself and you have to know who you are,
Right.
and you have had to do your own personal work on your journey, right? And so I know that I'm a nurturer, right? And for people who have addictions, that is like, oh, hey, I see you. I want you in my life because I want to draw from the nurture of in who you are. And so it could be very manipulative.
Yeah.
And I come from my background in my childhood, and I guess you could say childhood trauma is around I have a parent that has a mental illness, right? And so I'm the oldest child. I'm also the the nurturer, and I am, I've always just been keenly aware, intuitive, beyond intuitive as a child. And so I was the one who was helping my mom, right? And I learned how to be. I think that's just who I am as a person, period. But I think I also learned to just be very nurturing, and I could tell when things started to shift. And so early on, I realized, okay, I'm attracting all these people who need me, who
Hmm.
want they want to be coddled in some way. Maybe they have an issue with their parents or their mother, and they are attracted to the fact that I am a giving person, right? And so I had to be like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel good, because one of the things I realized early on is I don't want to take care of anybody out of obligation, and I don't want to be in a relationship out of obligation. And so it doesn't feel good to be in a relationship that is lopsided in any way, shape, or form. So for me, when I see that you have an addiction or you have some type of trauma that is drawing you to me because I feel comfortable and safe for you, I then have to question certain things. So, can somebody have an addiction and be in a relationship and overcome that? I'm certain. I'm certain that because it's really about what that person wants and if that person's willing to do the work. And I think that and I've seen it, that people have gotten in a relationship with the right person, and that person was their safe haven and allowed them to do the work, and they were willing to do the work with. I'm not willing. I'm okay with, I've done my work. I'm okay with who I am. And I want to be in a happy, healthy, loving relationship with somebody who has also done work, and they're not trying to overcome something. And so
Yeah.
I have to send love with to people that I may be attracted to, but I also have
Yeah.
to understand where the attraction lies.
Yeah. I love the clarity that you have. There's a crystal clear boundary of what you're not willing to take, and that's something that many people struggle with. A lot of people struggle with having those boundaries with themselves. This is a red flag, and I shouldn't go towards it. What does it take for someone who notices this pattern? I'm giving a assumption that they know that they have this pattern when they go towards the red flags, where they attract people who get either the nurturing part of them or something that's helping the other person stay in whatever bubble they are stuck in. How do they get out of it?
I think you have to have some self awareness, and you do have to have your non negotiables. You really have to be able to sit with that. And I didn't just start off this way, right? I've had relationships where I did not have my non negotiables, I didn't have my boundaries set. And I had to learn what those boundaries were because somebody had to cross them first, right? So I
Yeah.
think that you first have to give yourself grace, right? But then you have to sit and be asking yourself, what is it that I truly want? Not only from someone else, but from myself. Because
Yeah.
relationships start with you. You're the common denominator in all your relationships, and you have to be willing to do the work to ask yourself, what is my worth and value? And for instance, if a diamond is valued at $1,000,000, just because you only have 500 does not mean that you can have that diamond. It means that you are out your league for that particular diamond. And not to say you can't have it, you need to work to get there. So the same thing in relationships. If I value myself at a certain place because I've done work, I've realized, you know what, I attract these people. When I see them coming now, I have to be willing to be like, you know what, I don't care how much I like you. I love me. And so that is the starting point. And so I think you have to really get clear about who you are, what you want, and then what you are not willing to accept. And you have to have your non-negotiables and write those down. And you may meet people who challenge that. But you always got to go back to, what is it that I want? What is it that I'm willing to do to get what I want? And sometimes you may meet somebody that's like, okay, they're perfect on all these things, but that the one thing, because you have the list, but the thing that's at the top should be, I don't cross that line, period. And it doesn't matter who it is and how they smile and how they smell and who their mother is. Okay, I like you, but this is a non-negotiable for me. And I'm standing in that because I value me more than I like you. And it takes time, and it takes falling for the wrong people. It takes really sitting with yourself to ask yourself the hard questions. And a lot of people they're not willing to do the work. And so you continue to see that you keep attracting the same patterns. It keeps falling into the same patterns until you're ready to say, I don't want to do this anymore. So it's a journey.
Yeah. My wife and me have a saying that when you attract the same thing into your life again and again, I learned this from some show or some podcast somewhere, that life is basically trying to throw a brick on your head and say, look here, you need to work on this. And when you have the same thing coming back to you, focus there and work on that.
Absolutely.
And that's felt so true to me until this point. The second thing that I learned from what you're speaking about, you said you have to know what you value about yourself. And I just want to add a little bit of a layer on top of that. When you really value and love something about yourself, you have to also know that getting this other person who's not going to value that is going to diminish the thing you're valuing. So you're going to be reducing the value of what you care about. So having that understanding, that consciousness that this is what's going to happen if I allow this person in, is extremely important. Right? What is soul alignment?
So I know you don't do astrology or things like that, esoteric, but soul alignment is just what did you come into this world? What's your purpose? What did you come to do? And oftentimes we come into the world knowing exactly who we are, but then there is this forgetting, and our job is to remember. Our job is to go back and do the work so that we get to a point where we like, that feels familiar. I feel like I'm actually aligned with who I'm supposed to be. And so it's really about getting through all the things that life has taught you, whether it's your family values that have been basically forced upon you, or societal roles and expectations that you've accepted, and going through those things to start, is this what I want, or is this what I've accepted? Is this what I believe, or is this what I've been told? Is this something I know to be true, factual for me, or is this something that has just been presented to me and I accept it because I didn't question it? And I think you just have to go through questioning all of the different things in life until you get something that's congruent for your spirit, for you as a person, for you where you are. And just because what aligns today does not mean it will align in 5 years, because you are a human being having a you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And so with that, there are things that happen in your human experience that have you question. Then you go back and you say, let me readjust. It's just like going to a chiropractor. When you go in, you know, your back might be like all wobbly. Then they adjust you, right? And you walk out and you're straight and you're like, great. Over time, that wears off. And so you have to readjust. You may have to go back several times. You may have a time where, you know, this alignment lasts for a period of time. That's great. And then you have to like, okay, I don't feel so great anymore, and go back. And I think that's with life. You have to continue to align with who you were meant to be. And sometimes, like anything else, you might fall off, readjust, and keep moving. So that's what soul alignment is, really when you align with your true purpose and you are walking in your purpose.
Awesome. Okay, here's a fun question for you. Give us 2 truths and 1 lie about your relationship journey so far.
I've always stood in honesty. This is hard. 2 truths. Okay, I've always stood in honesty. I can't come up with anything. I've always stood in honesty. I like short-term relationships, and good Lord. What else? What else can I think of? I like living with people.
I would guess the second one is the lie.
Actually,
That's so interesting. You don't know which one's the lie there.
well, I would say this: I don't really like short-term relationships in the sense of like this is the end. But I think short-term relationships, like, they help you find out what you don't want, right? Quickly. And then you don't have to do a whole lot of investment. I don't necessarily like living with people. I always say my ideal relationship is you live across the street. I can see you.
Oh, wow.
I can wave at you. You can come over. You can go home.
Interesting. Wow. I would not have guessed that. Tell me more. What makes you feel that?
I honestly like. I think when you're in a really ideal relationships, having that person with you all the time is great. But I like freedom. I like being like, okay, I'm an introvert. I like being alone and like reading and having my quiet space and time. And I don't necessarily want to talk to you 24 hours a day, or like
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, why you put your pants right there on the floor, or did you think about the seat that needs to go? I don't want to have those kind of conversations.
Uh,
And so it's like, if you live somewhere else just across the street, then I can miss you, I can still see you, but I still have my own personal space and I can own that. That's ideal. But I'm good. I'm good living with people and sharing space, but have a woman cave.
I have such an interesting question for you.
Okay.
For someone who loves freedom so much, right? And you have certain requirements of how you would like things around you. How did you manage being a single mom? That must have been so hard.
Not really.
Really?
Because my child is an extension of me, right? And he does things that I would have done that I'm like, and it's funny because I have to like really sit with myself and be like, okay, that's something I would have done. Or, and then, and because he is mine, I think I can tolerate it. It's not, and then he's a child. Now,
Yeah.
ask me this question when he's 17, that, I can be like, living with yourself is totally different. So it's kind of cute and, it's innocent now. But I can imagine at 17 and seeing some grown man a tower over me that's like giving me back. I'm be like, not so cute. We need
Mm-hmm.
some space between us. But right now he's small enough for me to be like, not so bad. I can live with you.
When people go through a bad relationship, once they're through it, they've cut the cord, they're out. What should they do to heal from it?
Don't go jump into another one. I think, and I think that's easier for women than for men often. But give yourself time to heal, to really look at the relationship. And I'm a journaler, right? I journal, and so I write down, the good, the bad, and ugly. And I'm also a really honest person about who I am. So I'm okay with saying I did that. I contributed that. And, okay, that I did that part. And so what did you contribute to the demise of this relationship? Because it's not just that other person and they did that. If you are pointing a finger outwardly and you haven't took time to see inwardly where there could be some adjustments, you're unrealistic because you are not perfect, right? I am not a perfect person. I I'm not. I've never been in a perfect relationship. And there have been times where that person was totally wrong in what eliminated the relationship. However, there are things that I could say, all right, I may not have contributed to what they decided to do, but maybe my actions were not always forthcoming, or maybe my communication style was not always the best. So I think sitting with yourself and acknowledging these are some things I need to grow in before I go get in another relationship. And these are things, this is goes back to you finding out what your non-negotiables are. These are things I don't ever want to repeat in a relationship. I don't want to receive that from somebody else, nor do I want to contribute this to another relationship. So I think just sitting with that, sometimes you need to cry that out. And sometimes other people have done something that you thought this was a great relationship, and then maybe they grew beyond it and you don't understand. So like going back and reevaluating, what don't I understand? And that should be your journal question. What don't I understand about this relationship? What don't I understand about my contribution to this relationship? What don't I understand about their contribution to the relationship? And then what do I really want that I'm void of right now? And that gives you time to start giving it to yourself before you even expect it from someone else. I think that when you really sit with yourself and do some reflection, it gives you an opportunity to open many doors. And the one thing that I think is really important, because you don't want to go out and hurt somebody intentionally or unintentionally. And when you don't do the work and you don't heal from that relationship, you go out and you meet somebody and unintentionally you may hurt them because you bring baggage to the relationship. And I think we're never void of baggage completely, but if I'm thinking about traveling, right? I travel a lot. It is easier to travel with one carry-on and get to a destination than to have multiple bags that I now have to haul through an airport and get into a vehicle and all these things, right? So travel light is where I'm going with this, right? So I think when you can eliminate as much baggage as possible, that's when you've done the work. And that's when you can move forward and then get in a relationship. And sometimes it doesn't, you're in that process and then you meet somebody that's amazing. But to be honest, tell them, I just got out of a relationship. I'm still doing the work. And I like you. Maybe our timing is off. Or if you're willing to help me go through this process, but I don't want to use you to get over somebody else.
So critical. Yeah. So critical. Just to summarize, there were such important points in it. First, go back and look at the good, bad, and ugly. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And what are your non-negotiables in the good and bad way? Mm-hmm. Secondly, what was your contribution? What did you do that led to the demise of that relationship? And thirdly, what do you want? Right? What do you want based on what you have just experienced? And I think this should at least give you enough of a stairway towards that healing that you're looking for from the previous relationship.
Absolutely. And when I say, what did you do? You just need to be honest with how you showed up. And I think oftentimes it's easier to point a finger and, to see what somebody else did. Or, especially like, let's say if there was infidelity. It's easy to be like, well, you cheated. And oftentimes the cheater says, well, you didn't do X, Y, Z. That's why. No, I didn't make you cheat, right? Maybe I wasn't communicating in the proper style that you're accustomed to or that you needed, right? But then it's your job to say, listen, I need this or I want this, and have a conversation about those things. And so I'm never going to take responsibility for you cheating. That's something you did because you took that action. That was all on you. You could have walked away from the situation. You could have communicated what you needed and why you needed. And even if I wasn't willing to give you that, you then have the responsibility to say, you know what? I'm not going to do this to you. I'm going to walk away, right? But in that, even if that person cheats, there's still a point where you can come back to yourself and say, okay, they made a choice. And they made a choice based on these things. But was I communicating? Was I giving? Was I asking for what I wanted or asking for what I needed? Was I showing up authentically? So there's some things that you still can take accountability for, even though you did not make that person cheat. So I think it's always something that you can self-reflect on, so that you can be a better person in the next relationship.
I'll add a few more layers that just my perspective on since we're talking about infidelity here. It's not on you that this person cheated. But as you were mentioning, certain questions are great to think about. And one of the things I feel that's really important to think about is, in what ways did I contribute to the environment that made this person think it's okay to cheat, or that made them feel like this is the only option, where it need not be that this is the case, but was there a lack of safety? What was missing, or what was there, or did you not see the signs before? What was your contribution to this?
Absolutely.
Right. So those are the things I would just add on just a bit. Okay. The next fun question. So this is a very simple thing. What would you do? I picked out a question from an online forum
Okay.
and would love to hear what recommendation you would give to this person. Okay? So, this is what the person said. I'm so stressed. I had a baby 4 months ago. My my fiance in May, my fiance got fired from his job. We have a mortgage and he has just been yelling at me trying to make it like it's my fault. I'm currently going to school for real estate. We discussed this. He said he can't even rely on me and that he just about let the house go. I'm reaching my point. What should I do?
Breathe. Right. You first need to breathe. You can't fix that situation in one conversation. There's going to be some ongoing conversations that need to happen, and you all are not on the same page right now. So you have to get on the same page. And that's going to be honest about where you are. And if you just had a baby 4 months ago, listen, there are so many things that a woman has gone through or has to go through, not only preparing to have a child, during the process of being pregnant, then going through the actual delivery process, whether that's a C-section, whether that's a natural birth. There's so many things. And then afterwards, all the chemical imbalances, you don't owe nobody anything, right? Stand in your power in that. And if you've given that power away, take it back. But breathe through it, and be honest about where you are. I would not take on the responsibility and the shame of being a mother, because there's no shame in that, right? And if we have forgotten what our contracts were, we need to go back and renegotiate our contracts. All contracts are renegotiable, right? So you need to come together with your spouse and partner and say, listen, I'm a mother. I stand in my power. I have given birth to our child. This is how important our child is. I hope that you see that. I am doing the best that I can. There are some things I didn't even expect being a mother. I didn't even know what to expect. And I'm sure there's some things that you did not expect being a father, and now having this thing that we did not expect happen to us. And it's happening to us, not to you, not to me, but to us. And I would like for us to get back on the same page so that we can figure this out together to move forward. And I think that's where you start. If that person's not willing to do that, now we're going to have to start asking ourselves questions. Is this really the person that we, the contract is not, is negotiable. And so now we have to realize whether this contract is still sustainable. But before we even get there, it's many conversations that need to be had. And the house is not on fire right now. So before it gets on fire, let's figure out where the smoke is coming from and understand what we both need and how we are both willing to recommit to moving forward. I think that's where you start.
Speaking about single moms, what made you decide going to be a single mom? And I know it's such a difficult question. It's so personal. What called out to you that, I want to do this? And how did you face that situation? Because I'm a man, right? And I'm putting myself in the situation of a person who's facing this difficult decision. And I can't imagine how difficult this is.
So I don't think I hope, I hope that one is not saying, oh, I want to be a single mom. Well, I mean, let me take that back. Because there are people who, whether they adopt and they don't have a partner and they want to be a single mom and they have decided I want a child.
Yeah.
and I don't have a partner, but I want to be a mom, right? And then they choose to be a single mom. So there are people who are choosing to be a single mom. I don't necessarily think that I chose to be a single mom. Um, I wanted desperately to have a family, and I chose family, and I inadvertently got to become a single mom. And but I did make the choice to walk in my power as a mother and to do the right things that I thought were necessary, not only for myself, but for my child. Um, there were a lot of different things that I saw that I was like, I don't want to do this. And I believe that if you put a child in a loving, compassionate environment that is conducive for them to grow and to see love in you and how you show up, that even though they lack the other party, they're gonna be okay. And I didn't want to take him from his father, nor did I want to create an environment where there was any type of lack. But I also knew for me that my stability, my mental health, my emotional health, my values, my standards had to be forefront, because I was going to be the one that was nurturing and supporting this individual. And I think I did it at a certain age where it didn't even um I'm not gonna say, because I don't know the implications until later, right? And you don't know what you're adjusting or how you're adjusting until you adjust. And so I remembered very early on just having a lot of guilt, because I didn't grow up in the same house with my father, but I definitely grew up with my father. I saw him every day. We interacted. I knew he loves me. I knew that I came into the world in love. I was a planned child. So, although we did not grow up in the same house, under the same roof 24/7, I definitely didn't miss him, right? And so I didn't know what that was going to be for my son, because I wasn't moving him across the street or down the block or around the corner or even on the other side of the city. I was moving him across, to a whole nother country. And so I made that decision first out of love. I made that decision out of respect for myself. I made that decision out of clarity of what I wanted to usher in to both of our lives. And it wasn't that it wasn't difficult, but it was necessary. And I stand 10 toes down on that decision, because even though it hurt, even though it was difficult at times, even though I was uncertain about certain things, I knew that this wasn't a decision that I was making lightly on, I just don't like you anymore, or I don't want this in my child. I literally did the soul work for myself to say, you know what, is this ever going to change? I talked and said, this is what I need. This is what I desire. Not only for me, but for our child. And I didn't see that happening. And I didn't see that it was going to ever happen. And even when I walked away, I left the door open to say, if you do the work, and if we can do the work together, then there's hope. Because I really believed in the family unit, and I wanted that for my child. But I also really was very clear about, and this was at the beginning of me defining what my boundaries were going to be as a mother. Not just the woman, because I wasn't single anymore. I had a whole package that came with me, but I was redefining what those boundaries were going to be. And there were certain times where I was like, do I really have this boundary? You're going to have that boundary. You're going to have to stand in that power, because otherwise this is not going to be good for everybody. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was difficult.
I'm sure it was difficult. What tools were useful on this journey as you embarked it?
Journaling, building community around having other single moms, other mothers, um, just other families around me. Because I moved to Mexico, where I had other people who were experiencing the same thing. I moved to a place where there were a lot of single moms who were leaving, and for whatever reason, we all had different reasons. Some I agreed with, some of them I didn't agree with. Some of them I'm still trying to figure out what what the reasoning is. But then there were also families where you could see, and then you could then usher in a vantage point for your child to see, okay, that's a healthy relationship, and they're showing up as a whole family unit. And so it's not just my one-sided view of, being strong and being a single mom. You get to see this is what family looks like. But then also encompassing family as a community uh, was also paramount. Um, Journaling and just being real with my relationship with myself and the journey, and shedding tears and taking those quiet moments to myself to be like, okay, what are you doing? Let's check in. And then I had elders that showed up that, you know, let me know you're doing a good job. Yes, it's difficult. Don't ever accept anything that's less than what you truly value. And it was very difficult at times. But I think the other thing was just staying positive and having a vision of what I wanted for myself and for my child. That was extremely important.
Awesome. I want to be respectful of your time because otherwise I had so many more questions for you. So, respecting your time, I have one final question.
Okay.
What three shifts you would recommend for women in general to be able to get into their own power?
Three shifts for women to get into their own power. So I would say that the first thing that one needs to do to shift, or the shift begins when you realize that you've lost power, or you relinquish it in any shape or form. And then I think the second thing is acknowledging that you want it back. The third thing is knowing that you have power that has been lost, and that you want to usher it in a way, in some way, shape, or form. So the shift is really about, okay, my power, I've given it away, I've relinquished it, I've transferred it, whatever. Um, let's get it back. And then third, how do you start moving towards getting it back? And that those shifts come in different waves, and you may not even acknowledge that it's a power thing at first. You may just think, I'm just going through this experience, until you realize, you know what, I am a strong individual. And this is, I don't even think it's male or female, right? I think because gender doesn't have anything to do with it. It's just, as a person, you have your personal power that you can stand in. And anytime you find yourself in a situation where someone is disrespecting you, where you are not standing up for yourself, and this is not power struggle where it's a fight or you have to be angry or none of that, right? It could be very subtle. I'm just not standing in my power. They asked me to do something that is not me honoring my value, you know? And it could be just as simple as that. And it doesn't have to be, life altering. It just means, you know what? I need to have a conversation with you because you're asking me to do something that is not aligned with who I am and how I show up every day. And so I can't do that. And this could be at your job. This could be with your partner. This could be anywhere. This could be with your children. You're asking me. Like, I have to tell my son I have boundaries. And he used that against me. His mommy, I have boundaries. I don't do that. And I'm like, what? But I just think that those shifts come, and sometimes you don't even realize that they have come. But anytime you have questioned, like, I'm not really showing up authentically, but you definitely need to know and identify what authentically is. Because if you don't have a vantage point of, where the shift is occurring, it's going to be very difficult for you to now take
Yeah.
your power back because you don't even know that you even have power. But even if you are in the worst of worst situations, you have power. And I want people to remember that you are not powerless. The situation may come to test all your power, and you may feel exhausted in whatever the situation is, but you do have power, and it is yours to own. So I hope that helps.
It sure does. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for gifting us with your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, AJ, for having me. Thank you for just giving me this opportunity. And I want to leave people with the fact that, and I acknowledge that there are some men that have to end relationships for whatever reason. There are some not so great women out there. And there are some women who have done some plenty of bad things to men. And I am a person who stands for all people, male, female, doesn't matter. Um, and so if you are a man and you now find yourself where you need to be a single father and take your power back and raise your children in the way that you see fit, by all means, you are powerful to do that. And I know we live in a society that doesn't always honor that. And so I want to say and send love and light to those fathers who find themselves in that situation, because it's not just mothers, it's not just single moms out here, it's not just women who have, been cheated on, who, find themselves in situations, whatever the situation may be. But it goes for all individuals. Stand in your power, know your worth, love yourself enough to ask somebody to give you what you deserve, and also be willing to do the same. And so move in power, move in love, move in light, and it'll all work out. It may not, be instantaneously happening today, but, know that it can happen. And I just wanted to say that because I know that there are so many men who have to relinquish their power of being a father, being a supportive mate, because some woman has done something that wasn't the healthiest for the relationship. And I want to acknowledge that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for these amazing pearls of wisdom.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure to be here.